My parents would be so proud if they listened to my podcast. I finally interviewed a Democrat, not just any Democrat off the street, but Jason Palmer, the Democratic presidential candidate right now in the race, even though since his victory in American Samoa, which launched him into the national media discussion over Biden on Super Tuesday, since then, Joe Biden has locked up the nomination. He's secured enough delegates, but still, to land someone who's actively and still in the race, Jason hasn't dropped out. He's seeing this thing through. He wants to win the nomination because he believes he's the right person to guide America through this tumultuous time, which he believes at root is caused by disruptions due to technology. And this guy's a technology entrepreneur. He understands all of it. New generation, visionary, wants to modernize the government, thinks he can do it, and that's why he's running. But in light of the reality of the situation, that he's likely not going to be the next president of the United States, or rather, I should say, is not going to defeat Joe Biden in this nomination process, he wants to push the conversation towards a positive agenda, a positive message, an affirmative message, not just everything's going to be okay, but this is my vision. This is what the vision of the Democratic Party should be. It's just outstanding conversation we had. This is an incredible chapter in my search for political identity. I've been speaking to a lot of libertarians. I needed to speak to a Democrat. And again, not just any Democrat, and not just a Democrat who happens to be running for president, which is cool in itself, but again, a Democrat who understands the issues of our time. This was a really productive conversation for me. I hope that you feel that way as well, watching it, listening to it. And I just can't thank Jason enough for joining me, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of my audience. So without further ado, as I like to say, I'm going to let it roll. And that's it. I feel like I could call you Jason, but...
You can, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody calls me Jason.
Okay, Jason, thank you so much for joining me. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yep, my pleasure. So let's use the fact that I've been talking to so many libertarians lately as a frame for our conversation today. Being that you are read up on libertarianism, why is it, and interested in it?
Yeah.
Why are you running as a Democrat?
Well, I'm running as a Democrat because fundamentally I do agree more with the policies of the Democratic Party than the Libertarian Party. But as an entrepreneur and investor for many years, I recognize that 65%, 70% of our economy is driven by the private sector, small businesses, technology businesses, for-profit enterprises. And I really think not enough Democrats would feel comfortable saying those sentences and really thinking about them, that the Starbucks you drink is a for-profit company, or Dunkin' Donuts, if you're Dunkin' Donuts guy or gal. The house you live in, it was built by a number of for-profit companies. The car you drive is also built by capitalism. And capitalism is actually what has helped billions of people get to the standard of living that we're at right now. But it does have to be regulated. There do need to be laws that are established around it for capitalism to be successful, to result in more equitable outcomes. And so that's where I draw the line between libertarianism and the democratic principles that I believe in, is that libertarians kind of want to go all towards just free market capitalism to the max, no laws, no government. Right. And that's where, the logic breaks down, which we can get into in good detail if you want. But I really think we skip past, often too fast, the fact that 65 or 70% of our economy is for-profit capitalist companies. And that is what makes our country so wealthy and so able to do everything else that it does.
So thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah.
This idea that some people need the state, if we're just going to the base philosophically, why do some people need the state whereas other people don't? Is it just inequities over time? Is it inherent capacities? There is a role for the state, though. That's definitely what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, let's break it down into a couple pieces. So the biggest piece would be the rule of law. So there was a book that was written about 2 decades ago called The Structure of Liberty that influenced my thinking quite a bit. It was by a libertarian writer whose name is escaping me right now. And basically it's that laws and the Constitution kind of create this structure upon which liberty exists. And, some of those laws are about private property. Some of those laws are about freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom to engage in commercial enterprise, etc., and freedom of religion, yada, yada, yada. So many freedoms. But you actually have to think through what are the core principles that underlie this system of capitalism. And if you go into it, like I'm an investor, and as an investor, you really only own pieces of paper that say you're entitled to certain outcomes in certain circumstances if a company succeeds. I've invested in more than 30 companies. I'm proudly an impact investor. And if you think about it for a little while, it's kind of amazing that this whole system works, that everybody trusts everybody all the way down. And then I make my 3x or 10x return on my investment 7 years later. And that only works because we have this system of laws and the Constitution that undergirds it, protecting our private property. So at some point, all libertarians, when you talk to them enough, will realize, okay, of course, we need laws. We need some type of system that enforces our private property, protects our private property. And that's the number one thing. The number two thing, you might have to remind me of the question because I took so long to answer.
Yeah, no problem. Why do some people need the state?
Why do some people need the state? Yeah. So at its root, and I think people don't think about this enough, 54% of Americans, and this is in the wealthiest country on earth, don't actually have the ability to read at above a 6th grade level. And this is despite going to school for 12, 13 years. It's partly an indictment of our schooling. Our schooling needs to do much more to incorporate the science of reading and the science of literacy into our schools, which we could talk about. But if people don't know how to read, and people don't know how to communicate, and people don't know how to function in the world in a accountable, reliable way, they don't have the right character, values, etc., or even skills, then they're not going to make enough money to survive. They're not going to make enough money to get that living wage. And there's so many problems in our society, and there's so many people who don't have good schooling, good opportunities. There's racism, discrimination. Then they won't actually get to that middle-class job. Now, I'm running for president because I actually now have seen the whole system for about 50 years. And I can understand where the problems are in the system that are preventing so many people from getting to those quality jobs. And we can fix it without having to create like this giant government bureaucracy. We can actually do it quite well on about 20% of GDP. In fact, a lot of debates in politics are about, should we raise taxes or lower taxes and have federal government be 22% of GDP or 18% of GDP? Like it's all this fighting about 18 versus 22% of GDP, when really we need to do a way better job of spending the 20% of GDP we're raising at the federal level, and then the 15% that we're raising at the state level, if you want to get into that too, because it's about 35% total for all government spending at all levels.
Sure. So let's just give my audience a little bit of your background. You're a technology entrepreneur.
Yep.
Turnaround leadership is a buzzword that I see, and I'm going to ask you about that. That seems really relevant to running for president and calling to modernize the government, as is one of your big planks, it seems. And also deputy director of part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So that's part of your background, at least according to the internet. So turnaround leadership, that being the idea that you're the guy that comes into an organization that's underperforming and says, let's turn it around, like Bar Rescue.
Yes. And I have done that on 4 occasions now. And, I keep getting better and better at it. The federal government would be the largest turnaround I've ever accomplished or attempted. But it has many of the similar characteristics. So when you come into a turnaround, the first thing you try to do is figure out like what actually generates the value or in the revenue in the case of a for-profit business. And then what expenses are truly necessary? What are the core principles or values? And so each time I've come into a company, it's been losing money when I got there. It's been making money when I leave. It usually takes between 1 to 4 years to accomplish that. And with the federal government, we have a similar problem. We've been losing money for 22 years. Nobody's come in with kind of a turnaround mentality and thought about all the assets and thought about all the revenue streams and expense streams and then try to figure out, based on first principles and priorities, what can we do to turn this battleship around. And I have a lot of creative ideas there, which I would love to get into with you.
Yeah, it's so appealing to be talking and interesting to be talking to a Democrat with a business background. I mean, these are two things that don't even go together in my mind. You know,
They
I've
should
been
go together. The Democratic Party should be all about small business. Small business people share a lot of the same pragmatic, common sense, get things done values as Democrats do, but we often get kind of tied up in cultural issues, which are not the core economic issues where we agree.
Yeah, so not to say that this is kind of an interesting thought. The working man, because one of my questions is why have the Democrats lost the working man? But the
Yeah.
working man isn't necessarily the same as the small business owner. But why
Well, more and more. I mean, think about all the Uber drivers. Like, I actually think, in my simplistic view of the world, Uber drivers are where small business people cross over with working man, for your example there. And whoever wins the Uber drivers wins America. And I honestly am surprised nobody has gone out there and done a survey of, like, what do all the Uber drivers think? Do they want to vote for Biden? Do they want to vote for Trump? Have they heard of this guy, Jason Palmer? And I'm pretty sure the Uber drivers would want me, because I'm thinking about how do we restructure our labor laws that haven't been updated since the 1930s to make it easier for entrepreneurs and make it easier for small businesses, and make it so that everybody can be kind of a small business of one. Because that's what most people want to do. They want to control their lives. They want to control their income. They want to have freedom to do multiple things that balance kind of making money and having a productive, enjoyable, well-rounded, happy life, family, hobbies, etc. But we live in this like structured world that was created in the 1930s when the labor laws were kind of laid down, and it hasn't been updated since then.
So you're running presumably because you don't think the current president is up to the task. Nothing personal, no disrespect, but perhaps the president right now doesn't have this understanding of the world, and that's why we need a new generation.
You're putting words into my mouth a little bit. I'm running for president because I think it's super important that there be a positive vision of the future and a clear explanation of how we get there to a more equitable society where we really do lift all boats. And it's not, Jason's crazy dream. It actually has been done in my sector, the technology sector, over the past 20 years. If you look back 20, 30 years ago, the biggest companies in America were big oil, big steel, automotive. Now, 7 of the top 10 largest companies in America are technology companies. Software is eating the world. We are becoming a 21st technological society. And I thought it was very important to have a voice like mine in the race. And I also feel blessed that the people of American Samoa see the future more than any other, territory or state in America. It's probably because it was the first time that Joe Biden and I spent about the same amount of money campaigning in the same place. And when it's a fair field where he's not spending $10 million to my $10,000, that's when we came out on top.
Yeah, and pardon me for the inartful way that I asked the question. But so what role does technology, and you're the perfect person to ask this question, and it's a question that has been on my mind for weeks and months now.
Yeah.
What role does technology play on the proper role of government, which is what this podcast is all about? What is the proper role of government? What's true? So tell me, please.
Yeah. Well, technology can and should play a much bigger role in government. Let's just take government services, for example. So, depending on whose numbers you use, between 200 billion and $1 trillion of our government, federal government, is spent on providing services to people, whether that's food stamps, whether that's TANF, whether that's EITC. Some estimates even go as high as 1.5 trillion for this. And right now there are all these different forms you need to fill out, and it's still very paper-based, in person. We should have a universal form. Like when Andrew Yang was running last time around, I was glad to see him bringing universal basic income to the conversation. I don't agree with universal basic income, but I wish he had talked about universal basic forms. Like there should be one government form that you fill out, and now the government knows who you are, and you can collect services, and it'll tell you, it'll be smart enough behind the scenes to know, oh, you're eligible for food stamps. Oh, you're eligible for this housing thing. It's sort of like people can apply for 500 colleges at the same time with the universal college application, there's no reason why there shouldn't be a universal form for applying for all government benefits. At this point, that should be easy for us to accomplish. But it's not. It'll actually take about 2 years of technological reorganization inside the government. Other things related to that is we should have a Department of Innovation and Technology at the cabinet level. Like we have a Department of Defense, a Department of Agriculture. It's kind of shocking that we don't have a Department of Innovation and Technology. And this organization would be the one that would actually create the regulations around child safety, regulating AI, et cetera. This is not something that should be left to Congress. Congress doesn't actually know how to do this. And that's why they kind of like, what are they going to do with TikTok? It's like, why is Congress passing a law about TikTok? There should actually be a government agency that should be defining the rules around privacy, safety, et cetera. That's like the Department of Agriculture or like the Department of Defense. And we just haven't created that department yet. So, these are, I think, basic things. Another one would be right now, conservatives are always trying to kill off the Department of Education. We really need to get all of our people able to read, to understand math, to be ready with 21st century skills. Like we need to invest more smartly in education. I would merge the Department of Education and the Department of Labor together and create a Department of Talent. And we don't even have to increase the budget of that organization. We just have to focus it on making sure people get the skills they need to get to middle-class jobs and make the whole education kind of system rethink what's its purpose. Its purpose is to create democratic citizens. Its purpose is to upskill people to the 21st century skills they need, to give them, the chance to think about all the different jobs and all the different careers they could pursue, and to help them get into that college credential or career that's right for them. Sorry, I'm wandering a little bit all over.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all. You so many interesting things to jump there. And so let me start by saying this. If I had not gone to law school recently, and I'm not saying I won't be going Palmer 24 by the end of this conversation. I'm already getting there. I really like what I'm hearing. It's so appealing. Who doesn't want to streamline things? Who doesn't want to improve? But the law school skeptical, understanding kind of the structure of government a little bit, the questions start to come in. You go, well, is it appropriate to give technological innovative powers to the executive branch? It's interesting. There's probably a great argument that we should, but so many places to respond. Let me just jump into the TikTok thing. What do you think about this situation?
I agree with Ro Khanna that the current bill is not the right bill. Now, all that said, I think it could easily just fly through Congress and get passed. The main reason I don't think it's the right bill is that it's not at the nitty gritty of it. It basically says that if 20% of the company is owned by Chinese nationals, then the company would be banned from the United States. I don't think 20% ownership by Chinese nationals should prohibit a company from existing in the United States. It's an ownership thing to me and a control thing to me. We actually do have laws about any company shouldn't be able to be providing its data to the CCP, to the Chinese government. So we need to do a better job enforcing our existing laws with TikTok. But I don't think we should, for free speech reasons, I should explain. Like TikTok deserves free speech, and they're all the creators, 200,000 plus creators on TikTok. We don't want to be, we have a takings clause in the Constitution. We can't just take their private property for no purpose. And right now, I don't see an actual government security interest where TikTok is spying on Americans. Now, if there was that information and it was presented to me, and I don't mean TikTok spying on Americans, I mean the Chinese government spying on Americans. And so from what I've seen, it is overblown and overdrawn. However, it is, I don't see all the confidential briefings.
Sure. Earlier, you mentioned UBI. Can you tell me, because I wasn't really paying that close attention when Andrew Yang introduced the concept to mainstream America. Can you tell me what his motivations behind, and people who agree with him, behind proposing UBI, and why you don't like it?
Yeah. Well, I've met Andrew a bunch of times, and I'm a huge fan of Andrew Yang, and have even appeared on a panel with him before. Universal basic income is basically the idea that the government would give everyone a certain amount of money. often is talked about as like $1,000 a month, or up to $30,000 a year. And I believe that this could destroy people's desire to actually work. And so that's why I am not in favor of universal basic income, is because I think people need to work in order to develop the right kind of skills around accountability, responsibility. It actually can be a great passion of yours if you get into the right line of work that you really care about and are passionate about. It's a way people find fulfillment in their life. And if we give everybody money, then we'll have a lot more people not working. And that's not what we want if we want to grow our economy and keep advancing as a society.
Fair enough. So let's go to education. So you mentioned earlier that you are not a libertarian and you don't want to dismantle the Department of Education. So you believe in public schools then? Is that fair?
I do believe in public schools. I do also believe in public school choice, that parents should have the right to take those public school dollars and use them for charter schools or private schools or even parochial schools that go through some type of certification to validate that they actually are teaching kids to read, teaching them how to work with numbers, 21st century skills, etc.
And culture wars, we also mentioned that earlier. Do you think there's too much, libs of TikTok, this popular account on social media, maybe you've seen it. Do you think that stuff is overblown and disproportional? Are we just seeing some weird stuff and it's maybe not, so it's not everywhere?
Yes.
Or do you think we have a problem in our school system?
We have many problems in our school system, but they're about helping make sure all kids learn to read and get prepared with 21st century skills. And it's overblown, the libs of TikTok problems. I try my best not to spend lots of time talking about people who are who are discriminating against 100 trans kids, to take one example. Like, that really just it's an important issue to the trans community, and I support them, but I don't think that 100 kids who have a particular who are born a particular way or have particular things going on in their hormones, in their body, should become the major focus of education discussions.
Fair enough. So using that to transition to looking at our culture today a little more broadly, what is the state of American culture? Do you think it's healthy? Do you think it's multi-layered and kind of hard to answer this question? Do you think it's sick? Where do you stand on this?
It is multi-layered and really hard to answer this question. Overall, I think 80% of Americans are doing well and want the government to work and want pragmatic solutions. And that's why later this week, I'm going to be launching a new organization called Together, ! That's whole goal will be to bring the country together, to reduce polarization, to try to get more purple candidates elected to office. I often wear a purple tie, but since this is a podcast, I didn't wear a tie today. And it's because I really do think most Americans just want their government to work. They just want the government to kind of stay out of their lives, let them lead their lives the way that they want, provide them a little bit of help when they need to transition between jobs. And I really do think that this is people, only like 2% of us are passionate about politics. 98% of people just want the government to work and for it to stay out of the way.
So money, Bitcoin, this is an intersection point between libertarian values, and the government should get out of the money, fiat currency, and technology. Where do you stand on Bitcoin?
I believe Bitcoin is worth about $70,000 today. I own some Ethereum personally. That's my cryptocurrency of choice. And, I do think that the government should keep a regulatory eye on it, but not shut Bitcoin down or not shut Ethereum down. It serves an important role in the world. There's about $1 trillion in cryptocurrency now sloshing around. That's about 1% market share. So it's still very small right now, but I'm always in favor of innovation as a first principle. And I think it's a pretty amazing innovation, pretty amazing. We still don't know who created Bitcoin, really. I mean, we know the name of the person, but we've never actually had an interview with him. Don't know if he really exists. Bitcoin is a fascinating thing in our times, and cryptocurrency is here to stay. It will continue to succeed more, but there will also be disruptive moments along the way, like Mount Gox a decade ago, or like Sam Bankman-Fried this past year. There are going to be charlatans that are going to, or just discontinuities in the growth of this innovation. And so people should only invest in Bitcoin very carefully, or in any cryptocurrency, because there are going to be disruptions along the way.
So are these concerns about a central bank digital currency overblown? Are they well-founded? What do you think about that?
I have only delved into that a little bit, enough to be concerned about the government now having the ability to really track every single transaction and know who's making every single transaction. My own kind of libertarian sense gets the hair up on the back of my neck when I think about kind of overbearing government knowing every transaction that you're doing, being able to look back. Now, on the one hand, that's easier to solve crimes. On the other hand, that's the government, prying into everybody's private lives to an extreme degree. So if there was a way to deploy some type of government cryptocurrency that actually, didn't automatically mean the government was spying on everybody, maybe. But I have to admit, I kind of don't trust the government not to do that. So, I do worry about that. And I do think it will come. It will actually happen. And so we do need to think about it. We can't just pretend like this won't happen in the future. It will, in the next 5 years, maybe 10.
Interesting. I think that'll be something that you being involved in politics and hopefully getting elected. I mean, I'm with you. I'm on your team. I mean, I think I think those conversations are going to definitely be coming. It sounds like it's interesting that technology is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to ask, I had something on my mind about, oh yes, on the theme of technology, automation, AI, should we be nervous, excited?
Both.
You must have thoughts.
Yes, we should be excited and nervous. So I'm the first presidential candidate to launch a presidential AI on my website. I thought that would be my viral moment. We did get an article in the Wall Street Journal, but if you go to our website, you actually can see a talking head version of myself. You can ask it any question. It'll tell you my policy answers on any topic. It's actually better than me because I'm a little bit wordy and sometimes I forget what the question was. But this thing never forgets the question. It's super tight with all of its answers. I loaded it with 100-page of my own writings and my policy positions on my website, and it's super good. And then we started applying it to the email marketing and text messaging that we're doing. So, for example, when you send out 1,000 or 10,000 text messages, about 10% of people write back to these text messages, which is really interesting. I've never written back to a politician's text message before, but they're like, "What's your position on Gaza?" Or "How do you feel about immigration?" And at first, I'm such a rookie candidate. I was like, I'm going to respond to all of them. So I was staying up till 1 a.m. typing answers there, but I'm like, this is stupid. I should just apply my AI to this. So we applied the AI to it. We started responding back and forth and having little mini conversations with people, and people peter out, but people were surprised that it says Palmer.ai is writing back to them and actually responding. And then later I found from the Wall Street Journal, I was the first guy actually doing this. And I thought, well, I'm pretty sure this will be standard in every campaign next time around. Now, all that said, AI is in the second or third inning. I've been following AI now for 20 years. We really have had a massive breakthrough, not just with LLMs, but DeepMind, the protein folding work that's been done. Like, I really don't think people are paying enough attention to all the different flavors of AI. And this will transform our world completely in the next 5 or 10 years. And I would actually love to do a whole podcast on that topic. It'll transform education. It'll transform healthcare. It'll transform everything that we do. All of the crappy service jobs right now that people hate, those are going to disappear, and people are going to need to get upskilled to higher level jobs that involve themselves plus technology. We focus a little too much on the 50% of jobs that are going to go away in the next 10 years is what McKinsey says. I think it's probably going to be closer to 15 years. And we don't focus enough on the new 50% of jobs that are going to be created, which are going to be super creative. They're going to be gig. Everybody gets to be their own entrepreneur, but not everybody's ready to be their own entrepreneur. And our laws are not set up for that world where everybody will be able to be their own entrepreneur.
It's chilling when you say it's better than you. the AI, right? I
Is it?
mean, well, a little bit, right? I mean, so socially, economically, there'll be a lot of disruptions, but you say that we should keep
Yeah.
in mind that there's going to be opportunities as well. So, but
Yeah.
socially, are we concerned that we're going to lose our sense of individuality, or that humanity will be reshaped in a negative way in some way? Any concerns about that?
I when I take the personality tests, I score a little bit more on the innovative side of things. Always try something new. I mean, I know a lot of great VCs who are actually more successful than me, and they all say, "I can't believe you ran for president. I can't believe you actually won one of the territories." Because I'm a little bit more out there. I'm reading Elon Musk's biography right now, and I really get a lot of how Elon works is how I work, but I also see where we differ because I'm maybe more socially apt. I don't yell at my employees. I try to inspire my employees. Um, and the world is going to change a lot, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for people who are not as familiar with technology or feel uncomfortable around all this change. Like right now, our whole society is kind of roiling in polarization because some people want to go back to the 1950s. And we do need to get really clear on our values and our principles and our ideals that we share as a country so that we are moored to something. Otherwise, everybody will become unmoored. It'll be chaotic, and there will be a lot of unmoored people in this future world. But it's sort of like
Mm.
when, used to be 99% of Americans worked on farms. Then there were lots of factories. People moved to the cities. All of a sudden, there were brothels everywhere, and people were drinking, and alcoholism got out of control. And then they instituted prohibition. We're going through something similar, like a 40-year thing that we're in year 10 of right now, or maybe year 20,
Mhm.
where we're all becoming more connected to the digital world. Our lives are more digital. I'm talking to you over a digital connection, but you probably feel like you're really getting to know me. Like, imagine how much better resolution this will be
Mm.
in 5 years or even 2 years if we both had the Apple Vision Pros on. We're all going to be wearing glasses that allow us to have digital information presented to us. We're all going to have an earpiece or something installed in our ear that's communicating to us if we want. A lot of people will want to continue to live the traditional way like we are right now. But what is the traditional way? Like, if you're Amish, it's, having a horse and buggy. But most people have given up those horses and buggies and prefer cars. And in the future, I mean, most people and I'll tell you, in 1998, I remember vividly, I did not have a smartphone. Still had a dumb phone. And I was like, I don't want to be have a phone with me all the time. And I'd be connected. That lasted like 12 months. And then I finally gave in. And now I'm always about 1 year behind the latest iPhone.
Right.
And I do think most people kind of adopt technology at their own rate. That will continue to happen. And they're going to be early adopters. Young people are heavily
Mm.
able to multitask and accomplish incredible things with technology. I'm working with a kid on our team, and I will call him a kid, and I won't name him because he's under 18, who said, I want to make kind of a picture and like this. And, and he said, oh, I've never used any of those tools before, but give me like a day or two. Came back with like a piece of art that could
Mm.
sell for, and he didn't even use Midjourney or something like that. He actually did it himself. Then we ran it, the same prompts through Midjourney, and his is still better. But he'd never worked with any of these artistic tools before. He's 15 years old. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. So
this is a very different interview than my normal political interviews.
well, I hope that's a good thing, and
It is a great
I
thing.
suspect it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he had asked me 5, 10 years ago about technology, I would say, "Oh, put the chip in my head. That's so cool.
Right.
It's great."
Right.
And really, and I would have meant it.
But
And
you're getting old and getting conservative here. I hear what's coming next.
No, not necessarily. Like I said about, I'll probably be a Palmer supporter at the end of this interview. I mean, I'll probably come back around and say,
Yeah.
but what I'm really saying is I am right now on the particular part of X that I'm on, in the particular phase of my journey that I'm on, seeing a lot of narratives that are concerned. I'm seeing a lot of the unmoored people who are reacting to these changes, and perhaps that is the context where these conspiracy theories are popping up. And so, people are concerned that there's already these, if the public knows about this or A, B, or C, then the military or the government must have C, D, and E, or D, C, and E. So, so it is, perhaps there will be more people that will be unmoored, as you say, but times are changing, and no one in the past has been successful in stopping the tides of change. So we might have to roll with it. But this is a good transition into something I wanted to ask you.
Well, just briefly.
Go ahead.
Because 65 to 70% of our economy is the private sector, which is now especially being driven by technology. Software is eating the world. Technology is eating the world. That nobody is going to be able to stop that change. It is coming. And so we have to have a government and leaders who are younger and who get technology to help do things like have this Department of Innovation and Technology to actually be thinking about these questions about how do we keep people connected to society while allowing them to be a little bit more free in their life choices. And that's why people know in their heart that having, a 77-year-old or an 81-year-old running the country right now is probably not the best choice for our society. I also know that there's less than 1% chance that I'm going to be elected president this time around, but I feel like this is a long game. I'm in the middle of like a 10-year movement. That's why I'm launching Together this week, because we got to get more young people into politics. We got to make politics more responsive to the people. We need to bring technology in a thoughtful, careful way. We need to run the government like a business. These are all things that are 50 years overdue. I'm not willing to wait any longer. And I think most young people and most people who are business builders feel the same way.
Yeah, it's so interesting how maybe at root what's really going on in this political dynamic right now is about technology. Maybe
it is totally.
Yes, and we don't know it. We know it in our hearts, as you said, but some of us, we might not even realize it. So technology, yes. So why does a guy like Bill Gates get so vilified? It's kind of related to the past 5 minutes we were talking about. This is a technology guy, a brilliant guy, I'm sure. I mean, why do some people have so many concerns about this guy? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything like that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I've met Bill a number of times. He's a wonderful human being. Now, he was also, when he was in his 20s and 30s, a kind of a rapacious capitalist trying to, beat every competitor, build the best software, win the game. And a lot of people who are the best business people have this win the game mentality. I see it in Donald Trump. I've met Donald Trump a few times too. And especially when you're young and you're trying to like beat the competition and win the game, that's your personality. And that's what you have to do to win. At this phase in life, Bill has actually realized, and he's helping lots more billionaires realize, the game to win is helping everybody on the planet get out of poverty, have a full life, live as long as possible. It's kind of a utilitarianism, utopia is the goal. And that's why Bill and Melinda have their charitable foundation. I was honored to work there for 3 years. Probably the best thing they've done is they've actually convinced, I believe it's now more than 500 other billionaires to give away half of their money or more, sometimes as much as 99% of their money to positive causes. Now, why is he vilified? I think he's mostly vilified because of this misinformation out there that because Bill Gates invested in X, that means he has some like secret plan or something like that. He doesn't have a secret plan. I've worked there with Bill on education was my focus area, trying to help more kids get into college, especially from disadvantaged backgrounds, helping them graduate from college and get their first job. Bill and Melinda are both very passionate about like reducing human suffering, eliminating diseases. Bill is maniacal about we need to drive malaria out of existence and remove this scourge from the earth. And so he sees it as, I want to help humanity with all this money that we have amassed. And I think sometimes people misunderstand the intent. He really wants to help people. He wants to be remembered as the person who helped billions of people and actually have done so.
Okay, fair enough. So he's maligned.
He's definitely maligned, but he was a little bit nasty.
Not to say that no,
years,
yeah,
as a competitor, as a tough competitor. I want to beat my competitors too.
Sure.
But
it's interesting that nowadays, with all the humanitarian work he's doing, that people read such dark undertones into it, or some people on the corners of the internet, like
I do
that
think
I'm
it's
on.
only like 5%, but you're right.
Right,
There's a lot of
right,
them on Twitter. I
right,
spend probably too much time on Twitter too, and I see those, and every once in a while I've replied to them, and
right.
that's always a bad idea.
That's that's part of my problem. I'm on this space on Twitter, and you start to not sure. Certainly, there are some rabbit holes in this world.
Right.
We don't know everything, so
Right.
it makes it difficult. It's difficult to know what's true in
Yeah.
today's world.
Yeah.
Spirituality. We're talking a lot about technology. What role does spirituality, if any, have in our life, and what role? How do you see that changing over time? Any thoughts on religion?
Yeah.
Does this
Yeah.
all tie in?
So I'm a Quaker by choice. That's my religion. And if you've never heard of Quakerism, it's because there's only about 300,000 of us left in America. Quakers don't believe in proselytizing, but we do have some really great values. Like Quakers were among the first Americans to advocate for the end of slavery. We started advocating in the 1700s. We conducted the first gay marriage in 1971.
Hmm.
We believe there's that of God in everyone, and then there are many spiritual paths that could be right for different people. We started out as a Christian religion, but now I know Quaker Buddhists, Quaker Hindus. It's almost more of a philosophy. And in fact, I have a dream that in sometime in the next 5 years, I'll write a book called Quaker-ish, because I actually think half of America is Quaker-ish, but they just don't know it yet. And so I do think spirituality is really important. More and more young people and Americans in general say that they're spiritual and not religious. And I do think it's worth everybody's time to think about what are those principles that really matter to you. And for me, it's that there is that of God in every person. We should always seek peace as the first and best outcome. So we could talk about Gaza. I've been advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza since November. I actually think we should move towards peace and settlement in Ukraine at this point. Even though I was vehemently pro supporting Ukraine at the beginning and still am, I think we need to accept kind of the realism of the situation. I consider myself a Quaker realist because a true Quaker would be, marching on the streets in DC for peace in Ukraine, in Gaza, etc. And I'm doing it from, my home here in Baltimore.
Yep. You mentioned young people. Why are they so important to speak to as a politician? Is it because they're a large voting bloc? I'm genuinely asking. And what needs to be said to young people?
That is a great question. For me, it matters a lot because for the last decade, 15 years, I've been investing in young people as an impact investor. I've already started a number of companies. I've made enough money that I can now just invest in other people. And the people I invest in are generally young people. And they, at first it starts out about their business and winning and, making millions of dollars and changing the world for the better. But over time, it's like, how do you lead a complete and fulfilling life? And what do we do about all these changes in our society? And before I ran, I actually asked a number of my CEOs, would you vote for someone like me for president? Yes. Would you vote for me? Yes. Then I said, I went a little further. So would you donate to me? Would you actually campaign on LinkedIn for me? And I care a lot about young hustlers. I think that people who hustle and build businesses and are trying to make their way in the world, they're my people, even though I might be 15, 20 years older than you, or even 30 years older than you. And you are the future. And in every other industry, it's recognized that the young people are the future, and companies go to great lengths to have the first credit card be their credit card in a young person's hand, or to help them buy their first car. But in politics, it's all scrambled around backwards, and everybody's focused on how can I give more government benefits to people who are elderly. Like, can we, we're going to safeguard Medicare and Social Security forever is kind of the first thing out of most politicians' mouths, as opposed to we need to invest in young people. We need to help young people. Young people are the future, and you are my people. I will stand up for you. So when people say Trump is standing up for, the working class, I'm standing up for young people. You deserve better.
So what did you learn? What can we learn from Donald Trump's presidency?
Whew.
This was like,
Well,
do you remember when Hillary and Donald were debating and the question was, can you say something nice about your opponent? She
yeah,
couldn't do it. And
yeah,
he immediately, he said, what did he say? He said she's tough or something like that. So the idea, of
yeah,
course, is that no matter what you feel about anybody, you can learn something from everybody. So
right,
what
right.
is your takeaway from the Trump presidency?
Well, this is an especially tough question because by nature, I'm always looking for the good in everybody. I believe there's that of God in everyone. And Donald Trump makes it really hard, let me tell you. And that's because I think he is a cancer on our democracy. And it's really important that he not get reelected in this election. Now, all that said, if I really look objectively, he actually was a successful businessman in I would not focus on his bankruptcies. He has had 4 or 5 bankruptcies, but he's also had, hundreds of successful real estate projects. And he has, he is one of the builders and developers who's built lots of great buildings around the world, who's rehabbed lots of buildings. There are a lot of people that have worked for him, including some people that I know, who've actually felt like that enterprise was not necessarily a well-run business. It was kind of shambolic, the same way as his presidency was. But he is a billionaire for a reason, and you got to respect that. He also is very good at using turns of phrase to get the media
Mm,
riled up. And I actually think it's almost an instinct of his now. It's not even something where he's
mm,
thought before, like, oh, I'm going to talk about how it causes a bloodletting or something like that, like the one the other day.
mhm,
That was actually in reference to, like, if the government forces everybody to adopt electric cars, there's going to be a bloodletting here in Detroit or the Midwest. I think it was in Ohio actually at the time. And it wasn't about a bloodletting if he lost the presidency because his people would, rise up in rebellion. It was about a bloodletting of all the jobs that would be lost in Ohio, is actually what he meant if you listen carefully to it. And I do think the media blows these things out of proportion, and is not always even handed. The New York Times had a pretty front page article about Trump talking about this bloodletting. Now, the things he said about immigrants, that was right on in the article. And he is,
mm,
I would even say, hateful towards immigrants who are
mm.
dark skinned. And we should be honest about that too.
It's so interesting how he walks that line. And sometimes, I would say the majority of the time, it
Yeah.
seems like the media is actually in the wrong.
Right.
But there are those times where he says something that is just plainly sickening, and you
Yeah.
go, "Geez, what
Right.
to make of this situation?"
It
My
is about,
goodness,
I would say it's about 50-50. Like the dictator for a day is a terrible thing to even joke about.
I thought it was
But
a
I
joke.
could tell he was kind of joking if you
Yeah,
watch it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and they've been doing this, and I would have said to to the media 6 years ago or 7, 8 years ago, just don't play his game.
Right.
You're playing his
Right.
game. You know this, right? And
Right.
they must. It makes you wonder why they do it. But so what do you think about the media? Well, I've kind of already gotten a sense of it. Like most people, you'd probably say they're not perfect. And so, do we have a media problem in this country generally, or do you like independent media? What are your thoughts on this media
We're
situation?
going through an epic media transformation right now. Until a few years ago, I would proudly have 3 paper newspapers delivered every Sunday so that I could read the paper newspapers. And then, just a couple years ago, I realized I'm never even reading these. I'm reading them online or on my phone. And so even I've got rid of the paper newspapers at this point, even though they were so, sort of symbolic or traditional. I even love the smell of them.
Hmm.
But at this point, even all these books here, I'm reading 75-80% of what I'm reading is on my Kindle at this point.
Right.
And these are books that I read earlier when I was younger, and they mean something to me, but they're not where most of my reading is being done. So
Gotcha.
we are in a media transformation. Most people get their media from Facebook, from Google. I don't think people pay enough attention to the fact that people are also getting their a lot of their information through the TV still. Because it's kind of a legacy thing. I don't think people pay enough attention to how important the TV is, because that's where the videos get created. Then they get cut and spliced up and then put on Instagram or Reels or YouTube, TikTok, etc. But TV is still a key part of our media environment right now. And actually probably the core of the media environment, even though we're moving more and more to short form, 6 seconds on TikTok type things.
Mm. So, if we could spend a minute on the American Samoa story. I've watched enough interviews with you where I think I've got the pronunciation
You could
correct.
add a little flair there, but yeah.
Yes, a little flair. Well, everything
Yeah.
I do has a little extra. But so 91 voters, is that correct?
That
I
is
mean, this
correct. I didn't even achieve my goal. My goal was to get 100 voters to vote for me, and I thought I would come in second place. So I was as shocked as anybody that I only got 51 voters, and it ended up being first place.
So, have you talked enough about that story? Is there anything left? Is there any juice left to squeeze about this victory of yours? Which, seriously, congratulations on. That's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah,
But
I agree.
what's your perspective on it at this point?
At this point, I still believe, and I keep saying in interviews, it's not just because I'm want to be perceived as a good leader, but Miracle and her team on the ground are the reason why we won. I guess the one little extra tidbit I'll give you is, do you know about social capital?
No.
Okay. I think everybody should know about social capital. So social capital is when you've worked with somebody for a while or you're friends with them and you would do anything for them. Like right away, you will like respond to their text message in 2 minutes, or you'll go drive to the airport, or you'll let them stay at your house. Over time, we build up social capital in other people. And then like when someone loses their job, you call your best friends and you're like, I lost my job. I want to try to find another job. And those are the people that will help you. And so all of us have some amount of social capital. I'm very blessed in that I probably have like 5,000 people that I have social capital in right now. But if you're someone like Barack Obama, you probably have 50 million people who would help you, or 100 million people who would help you. And Miracle has a lot of social capital on the island. She's a teacher. She teaches 7th and 8th grade. And a lot of the people in American Samoa have either gone through their class or their kids have gone through her class. And she's an excellent teacher. And so we hired Miracle and 2 other friends on the island. They did a wonderful job of marketing us. They have so much social capital. People actually watched my video. More than 9,000 people out of the 50,000 on American Samoa watched the video. That's the highest % of my videos in any state that I've been in so far. And, when it came down to it, and I even know from conversations with people about the caucus that people were watching to see like, what does Miracle think? And how does Miracle respond to this? I was able to do 2 minutes of talking to everybody at the caucus by video, but I know that, it's because of Miracle, they watched the videos, they got to know me, and they voted for me. If there's no Miracle, there's no Miracle.
Well, congratulations and kudos to Miracle. And
Yeah.
Speaking of miracles, it's a miracle that I've landed this interview with you. So thank you for joining me. Perhaps we can start winding down with this question.
Sure.
Where's this race headed? Biden, Trump, do you think Biden is going to remain in the race all the way through? What's your sense?
I'd say there's a 99% chance that Biden stays in the race all the way through. And right now, if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win. I think it's very important that Donald Trump not win, and that's why I'm staying in the race. I'm competing this week in Arizona, Missouri, Kansas. I'm trying to launch Together to get more young people and independents to see the Democratic Party as a party that can be friendly to business, friendly to technology, want to be the innovation leaders of this century. And I'm hopeful that Joe Biden will start to adopt some of the language that I use in my speeches and my podcasts. I would love to hear the phrase conscious capitalism come out of his mouth, or the new talent economy, or if he talks about the Department of Innovation, then I'll hold a whole huge party and champagne free for everybody. Because I do think the Democratic Party, in order to win, needs to be the technology forward party. And that's what I'm working on trying to accomplish.
So interesting and amazing, and I'm really impressed and grateful.
Thank you.
So it's just interesting how we had this COVID and we had this unusual election, and the hate for Trump outweighed the admiration for him, and Biden won. But is it going to happen again? I know if the election were held today, Trump would win. Correct. But do you think Biden will, or the voters rather, by the time we get ready to actually do our thing, when we're doing that sober analysis, okay, does my perhaps displeasure or uncertainty about Biden's performance is it stronger than my disdain for Trump still? I would say that my sense is that people are so anti-Trump that they're just going to come out again, but not automatically and not without work. And so, do you think that that's ultimately where this thing's going to land? Do you think Biden can get there if he adopts the language and learns from the competitors in the race? Do you think Blue's going to win in November?
I think it's essential that Blue win in November, and we're in a catch-up situation. We are behind, and we have to catch up. And your analysis is spot on. We need to get people energized enough that they go to the polls or they fill out their mail-in ballot, and it won't happen by accident. We really need to work hard for it. I'm glad that Biden has more money in the bank than Trump does right now. Our messaging needs to improve dramatically. Like I was appalled when Biden turned down the Super Bowl interview. That's like a free $20 million in advertising. If you can't go on it, send me on it. I'd be happy to do that interview. And in fact, I am hopeful that the Biden team recognizes that I can be a good spokesperson for the future of the party. And so I hope to be out there as a surrogate in the latter half of the campaign. But right now I'm trying to get as many delegates as possible so that I get the best speaking slot at the convention and can stand up for these principles and hopefully get the crowd riled up.
Yeah, it's amazing. And landing the plane here, how unusual that it's not usually the case that a negative message, or rather a don't vote for him, vote for, a vote against Trump. And so, yes, Biden needs that affirmative message.
Yes,
and I think you're doing, and you're doing a wonderful job. And I'm thrilled to have met you, to get to know your platform. And
we're gushing too much now.
No. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's missing. You're providing something that the Democrats need. So that's why I think it's so cool what you're doing. So
thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And great to be on your show. It's good to talk at length about this and not have to be stuck in a 66-second soundbite.
Right. Well, thank you again so much for your time, and best of luck to you down the road. I'll be looking forward and watching eagerly.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.